Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the November 15th, 2021 Talawanda Board of Education meeting. I want to remind people for the public participation, please remember to come up, state your name, state your residence, and speak no longer than 3 minutes. And I am turning it over now to President Otto.
Thank you, Dr. Thoreau. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Ms. Stafelsky, would you please call the roll?
Dr. Knight-Abowitz?
Yeah.
Dr. Howard?
Here.
Mr. Mead?
Here.
Mr. Otto?
Here.
Dr. Roberts?
Present.
All right. Would you please, Dr. Thoreau, do you have a recommendation on the agenda?
I do. I am recommending that the board approve the agenda as amended. We had several amendments since Friday afternoon. Under the board reports, Mr. Mead's going to give some information about Butler Tech. We added an attachment there. We also added the presentation for extracurriculars athletics by Mr. Cole. We made a change to the 5-year forecast. We added Brombog information under the treasurer as well. And under the superintendent area, we left off the public participation policy that was first read, that was re-added on for the second reading and possible approval. In the classified area, we had 2 staff members that transferred into, I'm going to call them classified positions or secretary roles. So since they were transfers, they didn't need to be approved. And we also did not have an executive meeting tonight, so the numbers changed on it. Those are the changes for the amendments.
Thank you, Dr. Thoreau. Do we have a recommendation to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Do I have a second?
Second. I'll thumb wrestle you for it.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. Discussion. Would you please call the roll?
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Knight-Abowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? The Butler Technology and Career Development School Liaison Report, Mr. Mead.
Okay, Mr. Rand, if you want to put that slide up there.
You click on it, you should be able to see it.
If I look at the YouTube channel, there we go. Now I can see it. All right, the first thing I wanted to do on the Butler Tech report was just give an update on our building project. Butler Tech's involved in building a new facility out at Monroe. And the facility houses the equestrian program, the landscape program, and the vet tech program. And you can see this picture is a picture of the horse barn that's been remodeled, and that part is already complete. I know that a lot of Talawanda students, because I've taught many of them, that were very interested in equestrians and their horses, and I would encourage them to look into this program. If you go to the next slide, Mr. Rand, the building, the students had a lot of input into what the building would look like, and so the next 3 slides are just a front view. And I'm waiting, maybe I have a lag, or maybe it's, okay. Just a front view of the building, and the students wanted it to kind of have a, not a traditional school building look, so they got a lot of input into this. And then the next slide is a back view where the barn, actually, a new barn will come out of the building itself for the students. The vet tech program also has a lot of variety of animals. If you go down there, you meet ferrets and snakes and lizards and geckos and all sorts of things besides just horses. And other things down there. And that's a side view of the building, so it's a very nice project. It should cost a little more than $12 million and be finished in October 2022. Right now, those students go to D. Russell Lee for their classes, but they still can get out to the Monroe campus because many of the buildings are still standing, the barns particularly, and take care of the horses, work with the landscape equipment. The second thing I want to mention in the Butler Tech report is kind of thank the FCLLA for their role in the Veterans Day program that was here this week. I was able to be there for a short part of it, and I know they do a good job helping to organize that. There's also a lot of other groups involved in that veterans program, like the Steel Band, et cetera, and I think one of the choirs maybe. And then a lengthy report on the FFA, because Talawanda FFA is what it is, one of the best in the country. They were in Indianapolis and Tulsa, Oklahoma recently, and I'm going to read some of the awards they got, and if I mispronounce anyone's name, I apologize in advance. They got the Reserve Grand Champion Horse Judging Team, which consisted of Cecilia Gunther, Olivia Dumoret, Kayla Lightfield, and Olivia Zenkert. And they won this reserve as a team, and Cecilia placed first place individually in this contest. So congratulations to them. The Talawanda Butler Tech FFA program itself also got a national 3-star chapter rating. That is the highest rating possible. There were some senior chapter officers that were able to get on stage and accept this reward, Rachel Dursban and Morgan Gillespie. So congratulations to the whole FFA program for being recognized for how good we've all known they've been for a long time. 3 American degree recipients of the 2020 graduates included Casey Kondo, Dalton Slichter, and Michael Schwab. And only 1% of all FFA members earned this award, and there's over 730,000 FFA members across the country. So that's quite an accomplishment for our graduates from last year. And in the National FFA Extemporaneous Public Speaking Contest, last year's graduate Justin Bickner earned a bronze rating, and that also is quite an accomplishment in this group, in the FFA program. So I just want to thank our teachers for the great work they do down there and the students for participation in that program. And that's my Butler Tech report. Mr. Otto?
Thank you, Mr. Mead. The Legislative Liaison Report, Dr. Knight Abowitz.
A few things to report in process. House Bill 126, which is a modified Board of Revision process for property valuation challenges. I don't know if Ms. Stafelsky might want to comment on this later. This is a bill that would eliminate a school board's ability to file complaints and counter complaints on property valuation. The Ohio School Board Association has been trying to get people to speak up about this bill and how it would impact school districts. Also approved this week is a new version of Senate Bill 229, which is a blended learning model bill, which has some support by Ohio School Board Association and the Butler, the Buckeye school administrators, and it would sort of try to implement ways to help districts support blended learning, which means classroom and online learning both in blended models. And then there's another bill, House Bill 99, that's been in the news a lot. That just got passed through the House Criminal Justice Committee. That's the bill that is trying to overrule the decision of the Ohio Supreme Court in Gabbard versus Madison Local School District. Under the latest version of this bill, armed teachers and staff would have to have a concealed carry permit, which would require 8 hours of training plus take 18 hours of general training and 2 hours of handgun training. And this version of the bill also would require a school district to provide public notification if the school district authorized one or more person to go armed within a school. So that bill might come up for a vote soon. So that's my report.
Thank you, Dr. Knight Abowitz. The Arts and Athletic Liaison Report, Dr. Howard.
Thank you. Not going to say much about athletics because Mr. Cole is going to be up later to give us a wrap-up for fall sports, moving into winter sports. I do want to say, though, on the arts side, I was really thrilled and pleased this last weekend to be able to see Talawanda High School students back on stage in a theatrical production. Congratulations to our new director, Melanie Mortimer, and all of the students, just amazingly strong performances and really outstanding tech. And you know what? The tech students never get the props, and they should. That was a little bit of a pun on tech students and props. But overall, really just so pleased to see that program back up and running and students involved in that. Thank you to everyone, and thank you to the parents of those students and families who really gave of their time to let that happen as well.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. The Student Achievement Academic Liaison Report, Dr. Roberts.
Well, since Pat took my FFA portion of that,
Sorry.
oh, no problem. As long as somebody shouts it out, that's great. I would just like to spotlight tonight one building, which is Marshall. We have had that opportunity for the teachers and students in grades K to 3 working with Orton Gillingham strategies. This focuses on blending letter sounds to decode words using a multisensory approach to teaching students how to read. The students are learning some new strategies which are carrying over from reading to writing and spelling. Students have been developing their number sense with the use of number corner, which is part of the new math program. Teachers have been excited to see the connections that are making with numbers and the rich discussion students are having about numbers and how they work together. At the end of October, the first grade teachers transformed their classrooms into bat caves. The students had been learning about bats, so this was a celebration of their learning. Since bat caves are dark, the students enjoyed working by flashlight throughout the day, which I think is really quite interesting. And I know Orton Gillingham's been around for a long time, because when I was a Title I teacher, we used it as well, and that was back in the dark ages. So anyways, to have that opportunity. And again, I know that tonight Wes will also talk about our students who have been so successful with the fall sports, in particular our cross-country group. So with that said, that is my report.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Resolutions.
At this time, I'd like to call up Director Gregg. She is going to give information about the recent report card.
Good evening. Thanks for having me this evening. I'm going to talk a little bit about the school report card results that were recently released in the state of Ohio. Next slide, please. So this presentation is actually copied into the board docs for community and public viewing. If anyone wants more information on the state report card, you can actually click on that dark area and it'll take you to a site where you can search any public school in Ohio, and also more information about Talawanda, and you can kind of dig down into different grade levels. You can dig down into different buildings. Talawanda ranked in the top 10 of all Butler County schools in many grade levels and subject areas, so I'm gonna kind of talk through some of that this evening. The overall rating for districts in the 2021 school year was waived due to the COVID-19 crisis. However, there were still areas that were rated and released by the state. So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about something called performance index. That is one thing that the state did release. This translates into achievement for state report cards. So the performance index measures the achievement of every student, not just whether or not they reach proficient. So for example, when you look at state proficiency, it ranges from basic to limited to proficient to accelerated to advanced. So performance index actually takes all of that criteria and it spits out something called performance index. So the performance index for Talawanda schools was 80.8 out of 120, or 67.3%, which was ranking 5th in Butler County. I have listed all Butler County schools in this document so that you can just see in the transparency that we have in regards to what the performance index was for our entire district. I'm going to talk a little bit about each elementary building. So Kramer Elementary and Bogan Elementary both ranked in the top 15 elementary schools. Just for context, there are approximately 37 elementary schools in Butler County in the performance index area. Marshall ranked 26th. Talawanda Middle School is ranked top 5 out of 15 middle schools that are listed in Butler County in the area of performance index. And when we get to Talawanda High School, they're actually ranked 2nd out of all high schools for performance index out of all schools in Butler County. So again, I've listed all high schools that are included in that ranking within Butler County. Some of the information that you can kind of dig into if you want to go to that Ohio School report card link are things like end of course exams and Ohio State test exams. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the high school. There are end of course exams in the area of Algebra 1, Biology, English 2, Geometry, and Government. Rank them in the top 5 of all Butler County high schools, with Government ranking 2nd and Algebra 1 ranking 2nd. Talawanda High School also ranks in the top 4 of all Butler County high schools in the area of graduation rate, prepared for success, and attendance rate. And just for context, prepared for success incorporates things like CCP classes, also AP exams, and also any student who's taken the ACT. And at Talawanda, all juniors take the ACT their junior year. So our next steps for improvement, because we all know that we have improvement ahead of us, grade level and department level collaboration across all buildings in the district. Updating pacing guides. We have a brand new math curriculum ranging from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, so we need to make sure all those standards are aligned to our new curriculum. We want to continue meeting within buildings with our Student Assistance Program, SAP for short, to ensure success in the areas of not just academics, but also attendance, health, and wellness. We want to broaden the CCP offerings at THS. We're looking at some quantitative reasoning offerings at the high school. Currently, we are offering data science through UCLA and Stanford, which is a Joe, if anybody's a math person out there, Joe Baylor kind of heads up that. And so we're piloting a data science course at the high school right now. We have STEM throughout our elementary and also in our high school. So we are currently working with our middle school to incorporate STEM 6, 7, and 8 courses. We're going to form a district level literacy committee because in 2 years we are up against an adoption of looking at new literacy materials for all of our students. We want to start that work now to examine our reading and writing resources and programs. And I think Dr. Roberts mentioned earlier the use of Orton Gillingham. It may be an old program, but what we know about it is researched and proven. We want to work with our special education staff to implement those research-based interventions and programs to ensure student success in that area as well. So lastly, we know that Talawanda students, staff, and parents, building administrators, we all showed perseverance and dedication during probably one of the most difficult times in education in my lifetime, I guess. we're so proud of our students. We're so proud of our teachers. We're very, very thankful for our community members. We know that we have improvements to make, but just kind of showcasing those areas that we have done well in, but also knowing that there are areas that we need to really sit down and dig into and have conversations about what's next with our report card. Are there any questions that I can answer just about specifics or details from board members?
Great report. This is a really hard question, but can you help explain to listeners what goes into the performance index?
Yep. So the performance index is when you look at the Ohio State test at each grade level or an end of course exam at the high school level, there are rankings that students achieve, and it goes from basic to limited, proficient, accelerated, and advanced, depending on the score that they get. And so the performance index looks at all of those rankings that a student has, and it spits out a number, and that is the performance index. So I believe this year was out of 120, Talawanda hit 80.8 on the performance index with, I believe it was about a 67%.
And can I just add, the report card looks different, not only because they waived it, the assessments last year due to COVID, but they changed the whole format again. So you're no longer going to see the A, B, C, D, F, because as we have been espousing up here for the last few years, those grades were misleading, and they have wiped them out because they do not show what they had thought they were going to show. So they're going to look very different in the next couple of years.
In the area, I will add just one more point. In the area of similar districts, because I get asked that question a lot, what is a similar district compared to Talawanda? So the Ohio Department of Education releases every year similar district data, and it has a lot to do with your subgroups, your population of community, how much land or acreage. So there are about 20 similar districts in each grouping. Talawanda does not have any similar districts within Butler County. So none of our Butler County neighbors are in our similar district grouping. The only two closest similar districts to us would be in Montgomery County, and that would be Valley View High School and Brookville. That information is also on ODE with the report card data for anyone who's interested.
And Talawanda ranks in the top 30% of all public education schools.
Correct.
Any other questions?
Thank you for a very complete report, Lindsay.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Great job. At this point in time, I'd like to invite Director Cole to give a presentation on the fall athletics. This too also has an attachment, and you're welcome to open it up on board docs. There you go.
Sorry about that. Good afternoon. I do have a presentation to share with you this evening. When it comes up. Okay, we had a very successful fall sports season. We had many kids, student athletes participating. So we had 300 in the fall, and that was ranging across all of our sports that we offer at Talawanda High School. Last year, compared to that, we had 311. Currently, this year, going into winter sports, we have 153. And as you can see, last year we were at 142. So down a couple in the fall, up a couple in the winter. Next slide. One of the things that we talk about, and we've kind of unfortunately got away from during the pandemic, was the academic success of our student athletes. As student athletes, we tell them being a student is number one, being an athlete is number two. And I'm pleased to be able to share that going through all of the grade point averages from our fall sport athletes, we had 47% of our student athletes with a 4.0 GPA or higher. That is outstanding. That's something that we are very, very proud of with the athletic department. So when you say you're academic all league, that is a 3.5 GPA or higher. Looking at our student athletes from this past fall, first quarter, we had 71% of our athletes that were all academic. And then the final number, 80%, and that's have a 3.0 or higher. I mean, when we look at those numbers, our student athletes were really doing an outstanding job in the classroom this year. And we want to continue that, of course. Also, some success we had on the field or court or whatever it might be. League champions. We had 2 this fall, and that is girls cross country. And we also had, next slide, is the boys cross country teams. We were fortunate enough to host the league middle school and high school cross country meet here at Talawanda High School back in October. Talawanda High School took the boys championship and the girls championship. Talawanda Middle School took the boys championship and the girls championship. So there's a lot of good things upcoming with our cross country team. Next slide. And basically this is a listing of the rest of where our fall sports finished at. Our girls golf team finished 4th in the league. Volleyball finished 2nd. Girls tennis finished 3rd. Girls soccer finished 4th. And boys soccer finished 2nd. All those, again, put in great seasons this fall. The next 3, football finished 5th in the league. Field hockey finished, they had a victory over Walnut Hills this year. And our boys golf team finished 2nd. So as you can see from kind of top to bottom, really good seasons by all of our programs. We also had 2 SWAC athletes of the year. The first one's Kieffer Bell. You'll hear about Kieffer a little bit longer or a little bit later in the presentation, but this is his 3rd year in a row as the SWAC basically runner of the year. Next slide is our other cross-country SWAC athlete of the year, and that's Hannah Lippincott, senior. This is also her 3rd year in a row receiving that honor of cross-country runner of the year. We're going to miss those 2 next year for sure. Next slide. We also were fortunate enough to have Paul Stiver, coaching of the boys and girls cross-country teams. He was named league coach of the year in both of those sports, so congratulations to him as well. Also, a little bit of middle school information. Wanted to report, and you probably have seen this, but our 8th grade volleyball program for the 2nd year in a row was undefeated during the regular season and also undefeated in the SWAC end of the season tournament. So they have not lost a game at the middle school level, which is something that we have not had here since I've been here over 20 years. So again, those young ladies now are going to come up to the high school, and hopefully we'll continue that success at the high school level. Next slide. We were fortunate enough this year in girls soccer and boys soccer, so basically it's the next 2 slides, to host a first-round tournament game. And if you were able to see those or get out to those are really exciting. And basically both our teams had victories. So they got victories in the first round, and then they went on later on in the tournament. But that was exciting for those teams. Now we'll go on to our postseason athletes that are moving on. We had a district qualifier, Ty Huber. He is a sophomore, qualified for the district meet up in Beaver Creek. So again, hopefully Ty has a couple more years to qualify again for the district meet. Congratulations to Ty. Our cross-country boys team qualified for the regional meet. It wasn't just an individual, it was the whole entire team. They finished 9th place at the regional meet. I believe it's top 6 move on, so we were just short of missing that goal. But again, outstanding season by all of our boys cross-country runners. Girls cross-country runners also qualified for the regional meet, and that was at Troy High School. And again, they did not qualify as well. They finished 10th. So great job by both of those programs at the regional meet representing Talawanda. We were fortunate enough, our teams did not move on, but we did have 2 individuals move on at the state cross-country meet. And there's a picture of Hannah Lippincott. This is her 2nd year in a row qualifying for the state meet. She finished 64th place, which when you get up to the state level, they're all very, very good runners. And she did an outstanding job representing Talawanda up in Columbus 2 weekends ago. The next slide is Kieffer Bell. He also qualified, and I think the last slide I said it, but that was Hannah's second year in a row. This is Kieffer's third year in a row qualifying for the state cross-country meet. And as I said, just as the girls race, the guys race, there's no slouches. They're all very, very good runners. Kieffer ran one of his best races. Unfortunately, the athlete that beat him set the state record up in Columbus. It was outstanding, and Kieffer finished third. Couldn't be any more proud of those two individuals from the success they've had through their high school career. Next slide. Just a little bit of winter sports updates. We've got games starting this week. We're kind of jumping from fall to winter. On Thursday, we have our first ice hockey game over at Goggin. We're hoping to have a big crowd over there to cheer on our ice hockey team. And then on Friday, we're going to have our Meet the Team night, which is all of our middle school and high school student athletes in the winter will be recognized before our varsity girls basketball game. The JV starts at 6. And then basically when the JV game's over, we're going to introduce all of our teams. And then that leads right into our varsity girls game at 7:30 p.m. on Friday. The rest of the teams will get started in the next week or so. But yeah, we're right into the middle of winter sports already. But I think that is my update for the fall sports. If anybody has any questions, I could hopefully answer them.
So Kieffer is a senior this year?
Kieffer's a senior, yep.
So is Hannah.
Yes.
Hannah is also.
Both seniors. We're going to miss them.
Hannah still's got some time. She does swim too, and then Kieffer
Yes, Hannah
and
still has swimming,
can
and they
do
both have track season
track
as
coming
well coming up in the spring.
Questions or other comments for Mr. Cole? Thank you for that
All right,
fine report.
thank you very much.
Mr. Cole.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to welcome visitors to participate. Just as a reminder, you need to come up, state your name, also your districts of residency, and then you also have 3 minutes to speak. As you get close to the end, I'll announce that you have 15 seconds left. So with that, if anyone would like to step up and say something.
Dr. Sean Brooks, Oxford. We want this action and information that's being stated and distributed to you as part of the official meeting record for this board meeting. You're being advised that claims will be filed against your security bond as well as your good faith and honesty in office policy. Under Ohio Revised Code 3.07, Section 2901.01, and Section 2919.22. We may also sue you in federal district court under 18 U.S.C. 242, 18 U.S.C. 245, 21 CFR subsection 50.24, and 42 U.S.C. 1983 in both your official and individual capacities. We will seek compensatory and punitive damages against each Talawanda School Board district member individually, including the superintendent and the treasurer. In spite of parental requests to make mask wearing optional, if you do not rescind all of your COVID measures, which also include your implemented mask wearing, contact tracing, social distancing, quarantining, isolation, segregation, and discrimination throughout the entire school day, and all school-related activities for all students and employees, the insurance and legal claims may move forward. As of this notice, we require a vote tonight, 11/15/21, by all members to rescind any and all COVID guidelines and measures effective immediately. None of your mandates or procedures are bound by law. Talawanda School District parents reserve the sole and exclusive right to make healthcare decisions for their children, even while on school property. Parents are prepared to file claims of liability against you personally and your insurance company for damages. You're legally bound to your own oaths, not the oaths of Oxford City Council or the actions of Miami University, nor the Butler County Health Department. You stand alone, and we await your vote tonight. Officer, can you hand these to them, please? in order from left to right.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Good evening. Mike Dettman, Hanover Township. Just wanted again to touch on a couple of items. Fiscal responsibility. I see you still list that as a goal along with your other goals. I haven't heard an update on how you're doing on achieving your goals. As I commented a couple of months ago, to say fiscal responsibility is a goal, I don't think it is a goal. It's a couple of words, but a goal would be to put some numbers to it and say we're going to achieve a certain level. And you know, if you look at a new strategy and come up with new goals, I hope you really come up with goals that you can measure and report out to the students, the teachers, and the public that you're achieving them, that they're moving forward. The other thing, as I've commented on many times, we're still spending $10 or $12 million more than Ross. And I know in some cases it's not considered a similar district, but it is a local district, and the results on the grade card look good, but look at how Ross's are. We spend $10, $12 million more, and they're still doing much better. And it's perplexing to me that you had a performance audit and you pretty much said, well, we're not going to do those things. But I don't understand why not. Why can't we look at cutting some costs? You know, isn't it time to do that? Are you going to count on a new levy and hoping people are going to approve it? I certainly hope they don't, because you haven't done anything to cut costs. And again, thanks for serving. Thanks for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Good evening, Amy Shaman, resident of Oxford. I have a child at Kramer. Thank you as always for your service, and I appreciate that you take into account the entire well-being of our students. You take into account the guidance that comes from people who have expertise and wisdom that is greater than ours. So thank you for what you're doing for masks, and I know that the masks are on the agenda for this evening, and I hope that you will consider that our 5 to 11-year-olds are only some just barely getting started to be vaccinated, and very much appreciate the district offering a vaccine clinic. And if there can be the calendar taken into account that the children who will not get their second shot, if they use the schedule from the district until January 8th, plus 2-week waiting period in consideration before you make any changes to our current policy. I did hear a member of the Talawanda staff talk about how much masks are keeping our kids in school, keeping the staff in school, and keeping the teachers in school. So thank you for that. I also want to address one of the policy changes that are proposed, and that is the proposed change to limit the number of people who are allowed to speak at public comment. You know, not everyone is able to be at this meeting before the start of 7 p.m. Not every parent is able to be here even before this comment period starts. Any effort to require people to sign up in advance to speak is limiting free speech. Our community and our children, we teach them how to self-advocate. We teach them how to speak up for what they believe is right and wrong, even when we very respectfully disagree with one another. I believe that even though there have been challenging meetings, that our communication and our sharing of opinion only strengthens us as a community and only helps us understand who we all are. Please consider not restricting those who can attend this meeting and speak more significantly and speak at this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Pam Hodgson. I live in the district and I have kids at Bogan and the middle school. Similar to Amy, ask that you keep the mask mandate in place until kids are fully vaccinated. I know it's tempting to drop it soon, but it's going to be a while until kids are fully vaccinated. Many of them haven't had an opportunity to even have their first dose. So please just keep that in mind and don't rush to dropping that when the city mandates ends. I believe it's December 13th. And then I also just want to speak about the policy change for public comment. I think it's great how many people are getting more active, speaking up at these meetings, and they should not be limited to having to be here early to sign up. Some people, are coming from work or rushing out of the house, balancing, dinner with the kids and stuff. I came here straight from leading a Cub Scout meeting and, barely got here in time. It's already limited enough to having to be in person at this meeting. I don't want to see it limited more. And then I know you guys don't want people coming up and speaking and reacting to what other people say, but sometimes people just haven't had an opportunity to look at the agenda or know what some of the items in the agenda really mean. Like this exact thing on the agenda is buried in a PDF of policies that I would typically overlook, of just they're renewing all of these basic policies. That's what school boards do. So please just reconsider that. I'd like to see, more public participation instead of limiting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there someone else?
My name is Chris Williams, live on Garver Elliott Road in Raleigh Township. I'd like to echo the previous two speakers on the ability to kind of speak at will. I didn't plan to speak today, but I'm going to anyways. So it was mentioned too that, we need to think about masks, and masks are keeping our kids in school, but recently in the state of Ohio, amongst several schools within Warren County, has shown that out of 262 students exposed to COVID, only 255 of them did not get it. That's a 97% chance that your child will not get COVID. So based on that, the state, as everyone knows, has decided to change their policy to where if the children, are exposed to COVID, they can still come to school with a mask on. So I don't see how this policy would even keep kids in the school any longer, because if they're exposed to COVID, they still can come to school with a mask on. So, or they can, a lot of the other school districts are going with no mask. If the kid gets exposed to COVID, they wear a mask and they go to school. So I know everyone's kind of concerned about this. We're using fear to kind of make rash and unreasonable reactions to this and mandates. So everyone needs to realize that the children just aren't getting it. It's been proven time and time again now in studies, actual studies. So please take this into account when you're thinking about masks and whether or not the children should have to wear them, because they're just not getting it. And if they do get exposed to it, they can come to school with a mask on. It's already been proven by the state. It went to the health department, went to the governor. That should be the way our school should work as well. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? All right, thank you all for participating. The report of the treasurer, Ms. Stafelsky.
Okay, 4A through 4D, I am recommending that we block 4A through D and that the board approve the following as presented. Approval of the October 18th, 2021 regular minutes. Approval of the gifts from the Women's Music Club of Oxford. Approval of the appropriation modifications, and approval of any then and nows over 3,000.
So do I have a motion to approve for A, B, C, and D?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mead. Do Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Are there questions or discussion? Would you please call the roll?
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts? Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Next item up is 4E, and it is recommended that the board approve the October financial report as presented.
Do I have a motion to approve 4E?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Knight Abowitz. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mead. Questions or discussion? Would you please call the roll?
Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Okay, the moment you've all been waiting for tonight. We're going to go into the 5-year forecast, and you all have a hard copy of this presentation, and the community can follow versus the slideshow. But if you do actually want a copy, there are abbreviated copies at the top of the, or at the bottom of the stage there for you to take home with you. If you have not had the chance to review it, it is currently sitting on board docs, but I'm also very happy to email it to you. Just give me a call or email me. There are still so many unknowns to the new Fair School funding plan. It was delayed until December to be released, but the forecast is due in November to the state. So we are going to jump in and talk about our revenues, our expenses, our cash balances, where we were a few years ago, today, and where we think we're going to end up in 2026 if all assumptions come true. On the third slide, this provides a historical look back at our revenue expenses from fiscal year 14 through fiscal year 21. As you can see, we're building up our reserves, fiscal year 14 through 18, and then in fiscal year 19, we started spending more than what we were bringing in, causing some deficit spending. 1 or 2 years of this is okay, but a continuous pattern of this will cause erosion in our cash balance reserves. During the past 5 years of our revenue growth was at an average 1.7% annually, while our average expenditure growth was at 3%. On the fourth slide, this is a quick review of our revenue streams. The top right gives you a simple graph showing total revenue received in 2019 through 21 and what is estimated for 2022 through 2026. The top left breaks down all the revenue components, and the bottom 2 graphs show you the composition for fiscal year 20 and what we anticipate it's going to be for fiscal year 26. As you can see, Talawanda was very much a locally funded school district and will be more so under the new Fair School funding plan. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on the 2 biggest changes in revenue. This is all due to the Fair School funding plan and how it's going to affect our state aid and other revenue and how it's going to look on the forecast. So there's a couple of different switches or changes. This is demonstrated on the 5th slide. And as you can see, this is a graph of literally our, when you're taking a look at the forecast, the 1.060, 1.035, and 1.040. So when you take a look at the graph, the blue is other revenue, and this is where our open enrollment usually fell until this year. So fiscal year 20 and 21, you're seeing those blue lines. We were bringing in 698,000, 650,000, and then boom, nothing. That's because it's now going to be absorbed into those orange columns. So open enrollment in is going to be within our state foundation. It's not going to be broken up separately. The same can be said for the green column up at the top. This is where our career tech and our poverty-based funds were, but they are now going to include our wellness, our gifted, and our ESL funding. And just as a reminder, our wellness funds used to be the student wellness and success funds that were funded with a separate grant. This new funding formula is causing some shifts from the previous forecast and will skew in how we look at this forecast and a couple of the future forecasts. On the 6th slide, we're going to go over some of the revenue highlights. And although we have seen some modest growth in our property tax, public utilities, rollback and homestead, and school district income tax lines, the biggest changes, as I just discussed, will be reflected in how we are funded with our state revenue. House Bill 110 incorporates most of the fair school funding components and is so complex that the state has had to delay the release until December. I've said that twice now. It's that complex that they have had to delay it. What we do know is that the new funding formula uses fiscal year 18 statewide district average costs and developed a base cost approach that includes minimum service levels to educate our students. Once the base cost is calculated, which is estimated to be as high as $7,670 when fully implemented, the Fair School Funding Plan calculates a state share percentage of what they will actually pay each district. In that, it is based on 60% property valuation, 20% on federally adjusted gross income, and 20% federal median income. Based on these estimations, our base cost per pupil will be almost $7,200 this year, but the state will only be funding us roughly $1,500 of it. Talawanda is still considered a rich district based on the funding formula, pushing the burden of educating our children on the local community. And on that note, let's move on to our expenses, which is on slide 7. This slide, just as similar to our revenue, just shows the different categories. The right-hand side, once again, shows actual expenses 2019 through 2021 and estimates for 2022 and 2026. The left breaks down all the expense categories, and the bottom pie charts break it down by expense category percentages. Fiscal year 20 is actual, fiscal year 26 is estimated. As you can see, our biggest expense category is staffing, sitting at 74% in fiscal year 20 and 76% in fiscal year 26. Something that I would like to point out, and I have said this in the past before, is that not all of our personnel is paid through Talawanda, but other sources, which you will see reflected in purchase services. Going on to the next slide, 8. Just as with our revenue, we are going to see a shift in our expenses due to the Fair School Funding Plan. This graph is a screenshot of our tuition expenses. This is just one category in our purchase services. It's just the tuition. In fiscal year 21, you see the purple and brown sections, but in fiscal year 22, they disappear. This is due to districts being funded directly for the students that they are educating. This money is no longer flowing through our books. There is no guarantees that this formula will continue past fiscal year 23, but for this forecast, I am assuming that it is carrying forward through fiscal year 26. On to slide 9, and we're going to discuss our expenses a little bit more. Due to the student wellness no longer being a separate grant, we brought back our social workers back into the general fund this year. We've been able to keep some of our other personnel that were being funded through the grant out of the general fund by funding them through ESSER funds. But if the funding formula changes in any way, we may need to bring the others back as well. Only time will tell on this. Health insurance premiums are increasing 9% this year, and I've assumed an average increase for health insurance of 7% fiscal year 23 through fiscal year 26. Just as we spoke about on the previous screen, tuition out will be directly funded to the other districts. This includes open enrollment, community schools, and any scholarships provided to the students. What will be staying in purchase services is the College Credit Plus, which is Talawanda students taking classes at area universities. We will still be charged for this tuition. There are a number of other categories that flow into purchase services, though, and I said this about about some of our other personnel. Our transportation contract with Peterman, the personnel that we hire through Butler County ESC, our custodian contract that we have with Alpha Omega, our school resource officers through the city and the county, utilities, legal services, professional development, training, and the list can go on. Each of these was treated individually using historical trends and inflationary increases of 2 to 4% on average throughout the forecast period. This stays true for the supplies, equipment, and other categories as well. Once again, this is historical trends based on what we know, based on what we have as current contracts, and then built-in inflation, 2 to 4% throughout the forecast. The one addition to the forecast that was not included in the May forecast is the bus and maintenance project. $1 million was added in both fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. Moving forward, the forecast assumes COLA and step increases for the staff that follows the recently negotiated contracts for fiscal year 22 through 24, and a 4% combined COLA step increase for fiscal year 25 and 26. We also might have some unknowns in the bus project that could add some costs as well. Next slide, 10. We're going to be looking at the proposed 5-year forecast here. This is just a brief snapshot of everything combined and how it looks in a very simple, keep it simple format. You're going to see that revenues are increasing at an average of 1.26%, yet our expenses are increasing at an average of 3%. Now we're going to talk about cash balances on slide number 11. This graph shows a quick side-by-side of our finances. Blue represents revenue, orange are expenses, and the green line going through it represents our balance throughout the years. As you can see, our revenue is not keeping up with our expenses. Thankfully, we had and continue to have a cash balance to fall back on. And as you can see on this graph, we still have a cash balance at the end of fiscal year 26. We need to address this sooner or later, as this trend cannot be sustained. On slide number 12, you're going to see the cash, what a true day's cash will look like. We talk about how many days cash on hand we have at the end of each fiscal year often. This is called true days cash, and on this slide, we're going to see a little bit of the history and what the forecast is also projecting. As you all know, my comfort level is always to have 90 days cash on hand at all time. Some school districts do a 10% budget cash balance reserve policy instead. I am not comfortable with that, as it would average $4 million, and to get us through 90 days, we would need between 9.6 and 10.6 million, depending on the year that you're looking at. 90 days allows us to pay our vendors, make payroll just in case there is a delay in property tax advances and settlements. The red numbers on the graph show how many days of cash were on hand historically and how many are being projected in outlying years. As expenses escalate each year, so does the 90 days cash on hand of what we need. If you look at 2025, a little over 10 million represents 90 days worth of expenses. Moving on to slide 13. thought it best to sum up what we know as well as what we still do not know. I already went over much of this information with the previous slides, but it is an easy one page to keep tabs on everything, a refresher and a tap list all in one. Something that we are proud of is that we have not had an operating levy since 2004. Whereas most district needs, they need to go to their community members for additional money every 3 to 5 years. We are striving for the 20-year mark. That is something to be proud of. The Student Wellness Success Funds used to be a separate grant, reducing our general fund expenses, but was pulled back into the general fund with House Bill 110. The Fair School Funding Plan is still being worked on, so the numbers that I used must be considered estimates, and I will have a better calculation for the May forecast. We also do not know if this plan will continue past this biennium, which ends in fiscal year '23. Another factor is enrollment. Just like other districts did, our numbers dipped last year. I believe they have picked up, but I'm unsure if they have returned to pre-pandemic numbers. We are also very heavily reliant on property taxes, and although we saw an increase in valuations, we will only see an increase on our inside millage, not any of our voted levy millage. Those will remain flat. Ed stated this in May, that the pandemic relief funding is helping our cash balance. We will continue to divert as much general fund money allowable into these external grants. But let's keep in mind that there's a deadline to access and spend this money, with the last being the ESSER 3, which is the ARP money, and it's September 2024. So to wrap all this up on slide 14, what does this look like for the future? What do we still need to address? Our hopes of being part of the Butler County Rural Transportation Project on Chestnut did not come to fruition. So the district has started the process of surveying, hiring a criteria architect, and tonight approving a design builder. We still need to work out some of the details with the City of Oxford in regards to an easement, but we hope to break ground sometime in January. To complete our master plan, we will need to renovate Talawanda Middle School. To my knowledge, there is no deadline on completion. I just want us not to lose sight of this. We have been and will continue to evaluate and prioritize our district spending. We still hear that we have 6 neighborhoods being developed in and around this area. If school-aged children move in, we will need to make sure we have building capacity available. And finally, as the forecast stands right now, we need to increase our revenue stream to meet the needs of our district. We cannot continue this trend of deficit spending. That completes my presentation. So on that note, before you get into questions, it is recommended that the board approve the 5-year forecast as presented.
So do I have a motion to approve 4F?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mead. Do we have questions for Ms. Stafowski?
Shauna, I want to thank you for making this understandable to people who don't have a finance degree. So I appreciate that. And hopefully the community has a chance to go through this and see where we are and where we may or may not end up, depending on how the forecast works out. I know traditionally if you go 5 years down, you're going to be further and further off many times.
Correct.
Because all those things don't happen that we think are going to happen. You know, you said you were looking at a 2 to 4% inflation rate, and looking at things right now, that may be worse.
It could be worse, yes.
Or it might not last. So there's so many guesses in there, and I know 2 years out you can be much more accurate than 5 years out, and I think we need to appreciate that. I also think that if you compare this to the report, was it just last month, or it might have been Dr. Thoreau's, on the steps we've already taken and addressing issues in the audit, like the elimination of 9 teaching positions, et cetera, that we have to keep that in mind, that some things have already been done. I just want to thank you for the detailed information. Hopefully the public has a chance to look at it.
I also want to point out that on board docs, and like I said, I'm very happy to email this to you. If you liked it just in your inbox, just give me a call, email me. There is not just the very lengthy 22, 24-page forecast, but there is another document out there with a note to the community and very detailed assumptions so that you can go line by line. There's more in-depth on House Bill 110 that you can take a look and see how convoluted is not the right word, but just how complex it is. So if you would like that, go out on board docs. It is on there right now, but if you would like it just in your email, give me a shout out and I'll get it to you.
Any other points? Thank you. Would you please call the roll?
Dr. Howard,
Yes?
Mr. Mead,
Yes.
Dr. Knight Abowitz,
Yes.
Dr. Howard,
You already called me.
I'm sorry, Dr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Otto.
Yes.
Next item up is 4G, and it is recommended that the board approve a resolution to advertise an RFQ for professional design and engineering services for a Talawanda Middle School air handling unit as presented.
So do I have a motion to approve 4G?
So move.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Knight Abowitz. Questions or discussion? Air handler has exceeded its lifespan, isn't that true?
I'm sorry?
Air handler has exceeded its lifespan.
Yes, and just to note that this is part of our ESSER 2 budget plan, so this will be paid for using federal money. So this will not be coming out of our general fund.
Would you please call the roll?
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
Yes?
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Next item up is 4H, and it is recommended that the board approve a contract with Brumbaugh Construction to serve as Talawanda's design builder for the bus and maintenance garage project as presented.
So do I have a motion to approve 4H?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mead. Questions for Ms. Stafowski? Mr. Burrow? Would you please call the roll?
Well, no, I have a question. You're quick, Mr. Otto. That's a possibility. I'm slow. I'm concerned about the city easement. Are you confident moving forward, even though we haven't worked out with them how the easement's going to be taken care of?
I'm confident moving forward and having our design team in place, our contractors in place while we work out the easement. Even if we have to go to another location, we will have them on board so that as soon as everything is buttoned up with the land, we can break ground.
And if we have to go to a different location, that might increase cost, correct?
We would have another survey to do and another soiled.
So, and plus where the utilities are or aren't may add more cost to it, exactly what you're saying, Mr. Mead.
Okay.
I am above 50% that this is going to work out with the city of Oxford for the
I-
location that
Shauna,
we desire.
I agree exactly with Shauna. I believe that we will fit it in even with the easement.
Right. And I think it'll work out too. I just want to make sure, because we chose to build our own facility because it would cost less than joining and what's taking place down there in Chestnut. But if we have to move locations and start pushing up the cost, the only advantage of building our own then is that we would own it instead of having the 45-year lease, which is still an advantage.
All right, did you say 45-year?
Yeah, how much
It was
is
a
it?
40.
40. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Would you please call the roll?
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Next item up is 4I, and it is recommended that the board approve an agreement with Applied Behavioral Service for the 21-22 school year for classroom placement at a monthly tuition rate of $3,520.
So do I have a motion to approve 4I?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Knight Abowitz. Questions? Please call the roll.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Okay, a couple of other items. Due to a software system error at the end of fiscal year '21, I had to resubmit our certificate of estimated resources for fiscal year '22 to the Butler County Auditor, and there are no issues, but they did amend it, and I just wanted to let you all know that it's a different certificate of estimated resources than what was originally presented to the county auditor in July. So nothing changed except really the date at the top of the header. So I just wanted you to be aware just in case. Next item is the design builder. We approved the design builder tonight, but we still do not officially have the site, just as Mr. Mead discussed, to build on due to the easement restriction with the city of Oxford. We continue to work with city officials and are working towards a resolution. So our plan is to be able to do an application for an amendment on November 29th in order to get onto the planning meeting January 11th to have it solidified. So that is our current next step. I've been talking with Mr. Perry of the city. We will devise another letter proposing what the alternate is going to be, submit our application, and get on to their hearing committee to discuss this further. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Ms. Stafowski. Report of the superintendent, Dr. Thoreau.
I'm going to do some blocking too. So we're going to block 5A, 1 and 2. Includes the approval of a building substitute teacher. Each of the buildings have a building sub that we have due to the amount of substitute needs, and we have a very small substitute pool. So even though it is now November, we're still hiring, it shows that we're having struggles filling positions. And the acceptance of a resignation of a certified licensed personnel, as well as 5B, 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is the acceptance of a resignations, acceptance of resignations, there's 3, approval of limited employment classified staff contracts, approval of substitute classified staff employees, and an approval of an unpaid leave, as well as 5C, 1, which is the approval of the supplemental contracts. Did you get all of them, Chris?
I did. So do I have a motion to approve 5A, 2, 5B, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and C1?
Are these misnumbered on these minutes, on the agenda? I've got it as 6.
You have the old one that was before it was amended.
No.
So
Okay.
if you're on your computer refresher screen, or if you're a hard copy, it's the one that I left out by your computer. Everything was amended this morning.
Got it. Thank you.
So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mead. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Knight Abowitz. Questions? Would you please call the roll?
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
We are now on, a second, make sure I'm on the right one, we're in D. It is recommended that the board approve the new policies and policy revisions presented for the first reading on the October 18, 2021 meeting.
I would like to separate out the public participation policy from this discussion.
I would also like to separate out the one on weapons.
Okay, give me a second. Okay, so I'm going to do the 3 steps, okay? So we're going to change it. So I need to just write them down. 617. Let's start with the first one. The first one's going to be, I recommend policy 1617, weapons. And then we'll go to the other ones. That's okay.
So the questions that I have, as I looked at, excuse me, 1617, as well as 3217 and 4217, and looking at the fact that those had been around and adopted since 1996, and where the last revision was in 2017. The only difference between the two that we would be revising, 3217 and 4217, one is classified, and the other is professional or teacher, faculty one. The new one, as it appears here, really indicates kind of where we are right now. I know Dr. Knight Abowitz talked about House Bill 99, and I was at a 2-hour legislative meeting in Columbus last weekend, and this was brought up and talked about quite a bit. So understanding that the reason for the, excuse me, the revision of the weapons one, 3217 and 4217, is just because these are kept on the records, but the new one especially goes into a lot more detail. And so I would support that we go ahead and approve those 3, but I wanted to make sure that people understood why we had all 3 of them on there.
And can I just add a little statement? So this board would make any final decisions about weapons. By passing these weapons does not mean that a staff member could go out and get the training or whatever and bring a weapon to school. The board would have that discretion and would need to make a vote and pass it in a public board meeting. I just want to clarify, because I think some people were worried that if you pass this, then staff members could start bringing weapons if they did the trainings and stuff, and that's not true.
Not part of it.
No. So with that, then, so it would be PO 1617, 3217, and 4217.
Correct.
So do I have a motion to approve those 2 policies?
It's 3, isn't it?
3, yep,
It
but
is.
that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, these 3, excuse me.
167, 3217, and 4217?
4217.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So moved.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Who was that second?
Me.
Okay, thank you.
Questions or discussion? Would you please call the roll?
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, so now I'm going to do just the public participation at board meetings. So that's PO, I'm asking for the recommendation that PO or P001691.1 be approved. Actually, it's .1. I'm sorry, let me repeat that. I need my glasses. P00169.1.
So do I have a motion to approve PO 016.9.1?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mead. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Questions, discussion?
I think we could, I think we need to consider striking C and D out of this policy as written, as amended here. What do other people think?
I agree. On that first reading, I was struck by that language, and I'm not sure I understand the reason that we would want to implement registration before speaking at a meeting. I remember a few years ago, there was another district in Butler County that was struggling with residents who were opposed to a policy change they were trying to make, and so they changed their policy on public speaking, not only requiring registration, but requiring registration at the board office at least 48 hours before the meeting. The specific intent of that was to restrict participation. And I think this is certainly not intended in any way on our part to restrict participation, but I think it might have that same effect. As people have said, it's often difficult to get here in time, and I'm not sure I understand the reason for it. Can anybody speak to why that was added in?
It was recommended by Neola. Neola is our government agency with attorneys that has recommended this policy changed. So if you want to strike it out, of course, the board has that liberty to do that. But they believe it's important to, the board meetings are for the board members to work business. Now, they have a public participation period of time of 30 minutes. The president can make it go longer, 3 minutes, all of those standing items that are part. And one of the reasons to do this is to is actually to speed up the time when people are called. So the president would get the list and he would go down the list. I'm gonna make up names. Ed, come on up to the board, speak. Tom, come up to the board, speak. Gail, come up to the board, speak, and Barbara, come up. So it will cut down on those wait times that we often see in between.
Yeah, I know at Butler Tech, they do this, and there's other boards that do, but not that our decision will be based on what other people do. And I think that it's a board meeting maintenance item.
Correct.
That you sort of know what's coming up and you can make it move quicker. And if you see 40 people sign up and they want the same topic, you know, you can know that there's 3 or 4 people that want to talk on a different topic, and you might call them up after you heard 10 people on the same topic, so that any issues in front of the board are addressed. I'm reluctant to go along with C and D also, because democracy is a little messy at times, and I think that's okay. I don't want to do anything that impedes people's right and ability to take part in the public part of the meeting, which is only a part of it. We already have a half-hour limit. If we choose to keep that at the meeting, and a 3-minute limit, which I think can keep things moving along. And I think one of the things you want to avoid, though, is people that don't have legitimate business with the district, outsiders coming in. And I think Part B talks about anyone having a legitimate interest, district employees, students, residents, locally elected officials, not people running for some state office, or local business owners who may not live here but have an interest. It already leaves a list of who is a legitimate person to address the board at public comment. So I would agree with Kathleen that we could strike C and D from this and continue doing it the way we're doing it. I think it's proven to be okay for the most part. There are kinks in it, but as there are when you're in a democracy and the public has a right to speak.
I have a question, Ed. In paragraph 3, it adds, and special meeting?
Yes.
What is a special meeting?
Special meeting is not a work session, and hear me on this. So when we call for a work session and we're going to work on, say it's the bus building facility, that's all you can talk about, that's all you can work, and you don't make any decisions at it. So that's what a work session is, you don't make any decisions. A special session is any board meeting that is outside the established year meetings, and there's at least one decision made in it. So if we had a work session and the board decided to make a decision, whether it's to that work session or something else, like a hiring or something like that, it would have to be a special session. Am I clear on that? We've been really careful about how we are publicizing what we do, because if it's solely a work session, there's no decision and there's no public participation at all that happens in that. But in a special session, there should be a public participation time.
I appreciate that, because I'm not sure that our general public would understand the difference there. And, we're going to have some work sessions coming up.
Correct, and that's,
So
yes,
I wanted to be sure that it was clear what a special is versus a work session.
you're exactly correct.
Thank you.
So what I'm hearing is that we want to amend this motion to exclude C and D. Is that what I'm hearing from everyone?
Yes.
All right, so can we,
Wait a minute. To eliminate what?
C and D?
Paragraph C's and D's in it.
B, C, and D.
No,
C and D.
No.
just C and D.
C and D.
C and D.
C and D.
C is in Chris.
D is in Chris, D is in Donald. That's what I heard.
Yes.
All right, so do I have a motion to approve the policy as amended?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Knight Abowitz. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Any more discussion? Would you please call the roll?
Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Okay, so that part passes. Now we have the rest of them, so President Otto, are you ready?
Yes.
And Shauna, are you ready?
Uh-huh.
We're recommending the passing of PO 1530, which is evaluations, PO 2271, college credit, PO 5111, eligibility of resident status students, PO 5111.02, educational opportunity for military children, PO 5200, attendance, PO 5350, student mental health and suicide prevention, PO 5516, student hazing, PO 5630.01, positive behavior intervention supports, PO 6114, cost principles, PO 6146, post-issuance compliance for tax exempt, PO 7300, disposition of real property, PO 7450, property inventory, PO 8330, student records, PO 8400, school safety, PO 8462, student abuse and neglect, PO 8600, transportation, PO 8651, new routine use of school buses, and the last one, PO 8740, bonding.
So do I have a motion to approve the policies just listed by Dr. Thoreau?
So move.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. Excuse me. Dr. Roberts.
We We don't look anything alike.
No.
But you're both very nice. Do I have a second?
Well, you came out of that one really well.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mead. Any more discussion or questions on these? Please call the roll.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
Yes,
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Okay, I am asking, this was in just before, just a little bit of information. This resolution was in last month's first readings as well, but I separated it out, just kind of what we've done with this. I am recommending that the board approve the second reading of the graduation requirements class of 2022 resolution that was presented at the first reading in the October Board of Education meeting.
So do I have a motion to approve 5D?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mead. Is there a second?
second,
Thank you, Dr. Howard.
that was me.
Thank you. Both very nice. Any discussion, questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
Yes,
Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Motion passes.
This is 5F. It is recommended that the board approve the RESA Memo of Understanding, MOU, for the 21-22 school year as presented.
So do I have a motion to approve 5F?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Knight Abowitz. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mead. Discussion?
Dr. Thoreau, can you explain this?
So the RESA is the Resident Educator program that we must have. So that is for all new teachers that come into the teaching or education profession, that they have to be a part of this RESA program. However, when they're in this program, there's a lot of requirements and steps that they have to do by ODE, such as they're going to have to pass the RESA exam. So in it, with the evaluation system, if a person in RESA scored a skilled or accomplished, there is a reason that you would not need to evaluate that teacher during that time. However, the way it is set up in doing it, the only way to get approval to waive that evaluation cycle for that year, if the administrator and teacher agrees, is to have a memo of understanding with TEA, the union, and ourselves. This does no harm to it, but what it does is it takes the burden of the teachers of focusing in on the evaluation and then not preparing or preparing for the RESA requirements. So during the RESA requirements, they're going to have to submit evidence, such as a portfolio and video, to showcase that they are skilled or at least skilled in order to move forward to get the final contract. So this will, as I said, will allow the administrator and the teacher to waive an evaluation cycle if the teacher's doing well. Did that answer it for you? Okay.
Any other questions? Would you please call the roll?
Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
yes,
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. The next one is, it is recommended that the board approve HB or House Bill 1 substitute resolution for the 21-22 school year. I talked a little bit about this real quick. This, our legislators recognize that most school districts have shallow substitute pools, and therefore we can't get substitutes. And the only way to get a substitute into our buildings is they have to have a bachelor's of something, arts or science, pass the screenings, pass the interviews, pass the background, all of that type of stuff. under this new House Bill 1, which was just recently signed, anybody without a bachelor's, whether it's art or science, may be eligible to apply and become a substitute teacher hired by the district just for this school year. Again, we still have protocols in place that they have to be interviewed, they have to pass drug and screening, they have to pass background and be a good fit for us. So this will allow us hopefully to get a few more individuals to come and substitute in our buildings.
So do I have a motion to approve 5G?
So moved.
Dr. Roberts, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mead. Any discussion, questions? Please call the roll.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Motion passes.
My last one. It is recommended that the board approve an overnight student trip. Love doing this, that we're starting to do trips back. Proposal for UCA School National Cheerleading Championships. The middle school cheer team and the high school competition cheer team will travel to Orlando, Florida from February 9th and return on February 15th.
So do I have a motion to approve 5H?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Knight Abowitz. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. Questions? Would you please call the roll?
Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Motion passes.
For now, items from the board members. So, Dr. Thoreau has put together a proposed meeting for January 10th. Organizational meeting, a regular meeting. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Knight Abowitz. Discussion or questions?
So it's at the December meeting, we choose a president pro tem to begin that, correct?
That is correct. That will
Okay.
be placed on there. I just wanted to get the date out there, and just to let you know, I checked with the incoming board member to make sure that he's able to come on the 10th as well.
All right, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Mask and COVID update and discussion. Dr. Thoreau, do you have additional information about this?
So with the mask and COVID update, just some information. The superintendents met with Butler County Health Commissioners, I think it was last Thursday, Veterans Day, and we just received some information this week. The last 2 weeks, there's been a slight uptick in positive cases, not only in our area, 45056 zip code and area, but in Butler County. So there has been a slight uptick. You will also notice that some districts around us are getting rid of or strongly recommending masks. However, the students ages 5 through 11 just recently were approved to receive vaccinations. I quickly grabbed the first dates that I could when setting up with the health department when they could come out and do a vaccination clinic here. So we have November 20th as our first vaccination. We have 110 people, individuals currently registered for it, but our second one isn't until January 8th. I mean, I couldn't change the dates or pick a different date that was closer. I mean, I was at will of when the health department could come. So I have concerns that when we're talking about a mask, what's going on, that we ensure we have time that people who want to be vaccinated get vaccinated. I have concerns that we're going into the holiday and indoor sessions. So could it spike more? I'm not sure. I'm hoping not. We also heard the data that we have shared before with the pilot of Warren County, so that is some evidence in why some people are moving quicker on that. We still have a City of Oxford mandate in place for wearing masks, and that's through December 13th. So these are all factors to consider when we're talking about masks. Our quarantine numbers have come down due to the new protocols and procedures. However, as I just stated, we are seeing more positive students, very few staff, and the positive students tend to be in homes that a brother, a sister, a parent, an aunt, uncle, grandparent that has been positive, and it seems to be spreading that way. The last thing with the COVID as it goes forward, and we also, at this clinic that we're offering on November 20th, we will also vaccinate anybody who wants to sign up for a first shot, a second shot, or even a booster if they're 6 months out of it, and they can sign online as well. And again, I think our goal has been to stay open to in-person learning. That's the ultimate goal. While I am sick of masks like everybody else is, it's up to the board, but I am concerned right now if we do it too quickly.
Other thoughts from other school board members?
Yeah, I think that we need to start putting a plan in place for when we're going to end the mandate. And I think people are eager for it, and we need to start planning for it. I hear everything Ed is saying here, and am really deeply appreciative of having 2 vaccination clinics already scheduled. I think that's just excellent. I feel like the timing of this needs to be really carefully thought through, and I guess I'm hoping at the next board meeting we might hear some proposals of when it's going to happen, and approve a plan. That's what I'd like to see personally. And I really think it's also time to really invite our whole community to step up and get vaccinated. We're not going to, I know not everybody's going to get vaccinated, but our vaccination rate in our zip code is one of the 3 lowest in Butler County right now. And we're not going to win this war on this disease until the masks are not going to beat it. The vaccination rates is what's going to ultimately end this. And so I really want to help our community get our vax rates up as high as possible. Even realizing not every family or every person is going to make that choice, but hoping and encouraging as many families as can to do it, to take advantage of clinics, and to keep everybody else healthy. And that really helps us keep everybody safe and really end the mask mandates as confidently and as safely as we can. So that's kind of where I am as a board member.
I agree that we need to have a specific plan. We need to stop being so nebulous about it. I would agree also that our next board meeting is on December 13th, which is when the city mandate expires. And I think at that point, we need to make a decision moving forward.
I totally agree, because I think it behooves us to be open and honest, and to have a plan put in place, because you're right, we're all tired of them, but we also, I keep going back to losing Mike Davis. That was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to experience, and I don't wish that for anyone. So I certainly support putting it on the docket for the December meeting and moving forward.
I think I would echo those sentiments. I think one of the things I was looking forward to in getting rid of the mask mandate is the opportunity for our younger students to be vaccinated. And that opportunity is now upon us, and the district is helping people achieve that. And our second shot clinic will be January 8th. I think now that that's in place, and we know, possibly by that date, the people that want to have their child vaccinated will have had an opportunity to get them vaccinated in the second shot. I'm in favor of then, getting rid of the mask mandate depending on transmission rates in the county and positivity rates. So I would suggest that Dr. Thoreau, maybe next month you come back like the other three board members have said, with like a specific plan written up with some data points and a possible date, after that January 8th second clinic, where we can sort of maybe turn over the authority to you and say, we give you the authority to lift it if these conditions are in place, and authority to put it back on if conditions change, because that'll make our response more nimble than if, all of a sudden the virus takes a different direction and spikes. We don't have to wait for another board meeting to react, and to allow you to take those actions based on some metrics that we vote on in December. If you can come back with something specific, that would be my recommendation.
I'm just going to jump in a little bit because I'm a little perplexed a little bit. We do have a flu protocol or a contagious disease protocol when we have like 20% of a class, a grade level, or a building. When we exceed that, I have the authority to close it down. It could be a short time, which of course that's what we would be looking, I think, in this case too. And we could now have the ability to place people on remote learning. I hope that doesn't happen. I know it has been used in the future before, not in the future, in the past before I came. I believe it's been used once or twice. We've come really close during flu pandemics when we've had that. So my recommendation would always be that I will follow our policies and procedures on that. I think what I would be waiting for is putting this on the board agenda and the board making the decision. And then exactly this second part, if that occurs, then I could move into that, make those decisions. And I can put that on the December agenda if that's what the board wishes.
And that policy just follows what we've done in the past when we've had flu outbreaks. It's nothing new.
No.
I don't think it's something that we've done permanently. It's always been for a shortened period of time.
Could be a week, could be, for instance, I'm just going to give you examples of scenarios that happens. Like right now in Marshall Elementary in third grade, we have many students that are positive, and we are seeing an outbreak. So one of the things we could do is we could close down Marshall for 4 or 5 days, kind of like what we did with 8th grade. But what we're doing first is we're masking up during recess time, and we're checking and monitoring to make sure there's no more spread. But the 8th grade, for instance, when we closed that down, when I closed it down, I'll take responsibility for that. We were at, I think it was 32 or 36%. We were way over the 20% mark. And I was monitoring that, and I was hoping we could pull it back. But when we took those days off and went to remote learning, it's not great for parents, it's not great for students. But when they came back, it dipped with the COVID positivity rate, which is what we wanted to do. So I agree. Using those numbers, it would be a short-term closure. If there was anything bigger, I would definitely come to the board and say, hey, we need to have a different type of discussion or decision.
What I'm hearing the board say is we'll put this on the December agenda to review.
I will do that for a decision.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you for everybody for your patience. Our main goal is to keep these schools open, keep them safe. That's all we're after. Next, Capital Conference and Delegate Update. Mr. Mead.
I think
Dr. Roberts?
I'll let Dr. Roberts take this.
Go ahead, Pat.
Oh, okay.
But I'll talk about the delegate.
Right. Dr. Roberts and I were able to attend the Ohio School Board Association Convention in Columbus last week, and I can just say I found it very enlightening, and some of the sessions extremely helpful. I went to 2 sessions on school finances and, the state rules and reports and stuff, and certainly have some things to share with Shauna, who already knows all these things. But it does help me understand, all those issues that a history teacher wasn't aware of, like millage and inside millage and the 20 limit cap and many things. I went to a couple sessions on board effectiveness and developing a vision for the board itself, and hopefully if we have a goal-setting meeting sometime, Mr. Otto, I can bring some of that to the table. A couple of the sessions I went to are in more current events. One was on doing an equity audit, and another was on political speech of students and staff, which has come up numerous times, what teachers are allowed to say when and where, and what students can say when and where, and went through a lot of the court cases that determined the school district's ability to limit people's staff and students' speech, and the conflict between their speech and our freedom of speech, et cetera, which we can see in any community nowadays. And like Mary Jane, I went to the legislative update, which I found very interesting, the session. It went through all the laws that Kathleen talked about, a few of them tonight. And there's many, many others either approved by one of the parts of the General Assembly or the other, or some approved by neither, and where they stand, and things that affect us on the local level, like the House Bill 126 you mentioned about property valuation. I know the OSBA's come out against that, and possibly our board should pass a resolution against that and send to our representative and senator in Columbus. It was a very good couple days, and I learned a lot, and I appreciate the opportunity of going. I know Mary Jane was our delegate at the conference, so I'll let you take it, Mary Jane.
Okay, but before I'm going to go into the delegate, I just also wanted to mention, first of all, I'm grateful to have been able to attend. I attended an Equality and Equity, What's a Board to Do session done by Akron School District. Was very, very interesting about the kinds of things that they've done and the process that they've gone through to make sure that, to understand the difference between equality and equity, and to look at the diverse populations that we have and work through that. To give you an idea of how many opportunities we had to choose from, for example, 8:30 to 9:30 on Tuesday morning, there were 16 opportunities. From 10:30 to 11:30, there were 13. And so when you think about Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, there were over 400 opportunities for us to choose from. I was very excited because 2 of our own, Stephanie Jones and Amy Michesko, presented during the very last session on Tuesday. Support and Wellness for Wounded Educators, along with Dr. Joe Hendershot and Darty Hendershot. They did a tremendous question and answer session for that. And there were about 30 people there, because I know when I was talking to Stephanie and Amy, they said, you might be the only one that's there. And I said, no, I don't think so. So they did an excellent job. This is a follow-up to what they have done with professional development with the book. So I wanted to recommend, if you haven't seen or heard about the book, you might want to get it, and you might want to talk to Stephanie and Amy about it. But again, I want to say how proud I am of Stephanie and Amy. So that's my shout out to them. The delegate assembly is the annual business meeting. The delegate has to be, excuse me, is given that opportunity by the local school board to do that. I've done it for the last couple of years. It's not just that one meeting at the OSBA annual conference. There are 3 or 4 meetings that you attend throughout the year with other delegates as well. It's a very long and drawn out, but very important meeting. It started at 2:30 on, excuse me, Monday afternoon, the 8th, and we finished up at about 5:30. They usually don't run that long, but there was one specific issue, and I have made copies for those of you so that you can see the amendments that were worked on and that were supported and approved, and the one that took about an hour, which was from item line number 141 through 172. It finally came to a vote, and it was very interesting because it failed because if it doesn't have 3/4 of the representatives there, it fails. And actually, it had 72.3% that approved it, so it did not pass. The other big issue that was on is a resolution recommending an amendment to the Ohio School Boards Association Constitution, which is totally different. And this was presented by Cambridge City School District. We had, as delegates, we had the opportunity this summer to take a look at it. And what they wanted to do was see if they couldn't move the number of representatives on the, excuse me, on the, pardon me, on the, let me read this for you. The OSBA mission is to serve Ohio's public school board members and the diverse districts they represent. And so it was established in 1955 that the Regional School Boards Association, with 5 regional associations banded together to coordinate activities. And at this point in time, it is felt that there were the southeast was not very well represented, because if you think about the southeastern section of Ohio, there are a lot of smaller districts there, and so they wanted to move the number of people on this particular representation from 32 to 26, taking away from the Big 8, which are obviously it's Columbus, Cleveland, Toledo, Cincinnati, and so it did not pass. And actually what happened was we asked to have more information, and so it was actually tabled because there was so much discussion, and really they could not come to an agreement on even putting it on the vote. So it has been tabled, and it will be brought back in the summer by Cambridge City Schools. That's my report.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts and Mr. Mead. Our next meeting should be a special session because we'll be taking action. That'll be November 29th, and then our regular meeting will be December 13th.
I thought the 29th was a work session.
It's a work session for
29th is
any
a work
construction
session.
matters.
Are we going to take an action?
We should not be taking any
Okay.
action.
No,
Then it'll be a work session.
it's a work session.
All right.
Well,
Very- Pardon me?
I take that back. We may be making some decisions.
That's what I thought. So I think we'll call it a special session. We'll put a /work session on it. And then if a decision as we develop the agenda needs to be made, it'll be a special session
allows
with
us
public
to, yeah.
participation.
So part of it would have public participation?
If you have to, if you make a decision, yes.
Right, but the first part of the work session would not.
No, so when you do the work session, great question. So when you do the work session part of it, there would be no public participation
Right.
into the work session. And then say you went to I'm gonna call it item B, and you wanted to approve something, then that would be, you would have to have a public session sometime in between, somewhere in the agenda.
Okay.
And what time does that meeting start?
6 PM.
6 p.m.
And again, if we need to cancel it because we don't have everything that we need, which we've found has happened, we will send out a cancellation notice as well.
All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I was going to say, nobody wants to go?
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Would you please call the roll?
Dr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Mead?
Yes.
Dr. Knight Abowitz?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes. Motion.
adjourned.
Ooh, yep.